who has received many international awards for bringing peace. Please, can we put our hands together for the special envoy? Thank you very much, ma'am. Mom, I think you should sit. Let me call the order so that you can have pictures before you speak. Or you want to be eating and then when she speaks, you two come to go to eat. How do you want us to do it? Because all the panelists have to come and sit with us here. I want to recognize the presence of Honorable Deng Hokia, Minister of General Education and Instruction, Republic of South Sudan. Please, can you come to the podium? I will also want to recognize the presence of His Excellency Honorable Abdurrahman Muhammad Abduli, State Minister for Culture and Higher Education, Federal Republic of Somalia. A round of applause. I know our fingers are joking. I will also want to recognize and invite to the podium His Excellency Mr. Martin Aslan, Ambassador, Permanent Mission of Norway to the African Union, our very distinguished partner. A round of applause, please. And last but not the least, I will invite His Excellency Mr. Torbjörn Peterson, Ambassador of Sweden to the African Union and the Federal Republic of Ethiopia. A round of applause. So, I don't know if each one of us have a mic by our side, or we can be passing one mic, or I don't know if you prefer to stand to speak. I like standing to speak. Thank you, ma'am. Okay. I will first call on our special envoy, Her Excellency Bikoy, and we have these questions. How significant is this summit for silencing the guns? Not that. I will not ask you that question. Yes, just come and talk, because you're a technical person. You are a professor of peace and conflict. So, please clap for her.
Honorable ministers, Your Excellencies and distinguished participants, I would like to start by extending His Excellency President Museveni's apology for not being here with you. He should have been a co-host with His Excellency Buhari, but unfortunately he had to return to Uganda suddenly and could not be with you. So he extends his profound apology, but also wishes you excellent deliberations. I'll start my intervention, because we've been given very little time, by saying that the AU vision of silencing the gun by 2020 is extremely important. I want to urge the AU and African leaders in particular that let not this be just a slogan. Let us walk the talk. Let's do something about it that can have an impact, make a change, and not brush it off that 2020 was a year of silencing the gun without having silenced the gun. Because if we silence the gun, then we have no business being here discussing protection of children. Then we would be discussing health, we would be discussing education and development. Uganda is probably one country that experienced massive violation of children's rights as a result of the Lord's Resistance Army War, which lasted more than 20 years. According to UNICEF, over 200,000 children were forcefully conscripted to go and fight a war they did not know. I shared some of their experiences because I was on the spot trying to end the war. And these children talked of the fear when they're snatched from the security of their families, when they're taken, trained, and forced to go back home and kill their families so that they would not go back, they would not escape anymore. The girls talked of how they were paraded, and some of them had not even reached puberty, paraded and taken as wife slaves. And some of them conceived without knowing that they had conceived because their bodies were not ready. They talked of the fear of being asked to kill one another. So that experience alone, hearing their stories, is chilling, it's heartbreaking. And when some of them were lucky to have been rescued, when they went home, that community they left that provided them security became hostile because of what they did to them. The girls who had children, they couldn't fit in their families anymore. They were sent away because you brought shame on us. You have the children of the killers. We cannot live with you. The boys who killed, parents, or when the parents are dead, the next of kin send them away because of fear of what they did, because they became killing machines, killed people in the most horrible manner. And therefore, next of kin would not put up with them because they were scared of them. Those who were sent to school, when they exhibited some element of violence in argument, they were told, you see, some of them were sent away from school. Some were excluded because they said, these are killers. Up to today in northern Uganda, we have former child soldiers who are still battling with what they experienced, what was done to them. The mothers sometimes come to me and say, you know, some of our children ask us who our fathers are. And some of them tell them, you are a product of rape. So the child gets angry, says, you mean I'm an unwanted child? What do I do with this kind of child? Some of them ask whether they should disclose to them, to these children, that they are children of this most feared rebel leader. And I said it's important they know their origin. But they battle with the stigma, with the psychological impact of the war that they experienced and now in their community also rejected. So we have a huge problem if we do not protect children. So my appeal is, let's invest in prevention. Let's prevent conflict. I've studied many origins of conflict in Africa. They don't start overnight. It starts grooms, but leaders usually consider it, perceive it as a sign of weakness if you deal with it early enough. So they wait until it becomes fully blown. Let us invest in our communities at the grassroots level, because they know when war is breaking out, especially the grassroots women. They are the mothers. They are the wives. They're the ones who get maimed. They're the ones who live in camps, in squalid camps, in a lot of difficulties taking care of their communities. But they know who the fighters are, and they can talk to them. Let's invest in empowering them so that we can prevent conflict. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Another round of applause. In less than 5 minutes, she has given us the grim picture of violence and of war, as well as the consequences of such wars. Imagine children not knowing who their father or who bore them, who they should call father. That is is a psychological violence and emotional trauma that can never be erased. The more reason why we should stop the war. So quickly, I'm going to call on His Excellency Honorable Deng Deng Hogyai, the Minister of General Education and Instruction, Republic of Sudan, am I right, sir? Of South Sudan, protection of education from attacks and military use. And the question is this, sir, I know you are tall. How significant is this summit for silencing the guns and creating a conducive environment for development in South Sudan? And the second question, sir, is what is your government going to do towards protecting children from the 6 grave violations and contributing to the AU's theme of the year, silencing the guns, creating conducive environment for Africa's development?
Your Excellency, Professor Sarah Nyang Agbor, the AU Commissioner for Human Resources, Science and Technology, Your Excellency, Madam Virginia Gamba, the UN Special Representative of the Secretary General for Children and Armed Conflict, my colleagues, the Honorable Ministers, Your Excellency Steve Miller, CEO, Save the Children South Africa, Your Excellencies, the ambassadors and heads of diplomatic missions, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor and a rare privilege to be with you today, and I'm delighted to speak at this high-level meeting. The theme of this meeting is relevant to Africa and my country, South Sudan, and is close to my heart. Africa had a lion's share of the recent conflicts of the world. Our situation very often reminds you of the words of Hamlet in William Shakespeare's play Hamlet. And I would like to quote, "To be or not to be, that's the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them. For the children of Africa to continue to be, and for Africa to rise, we must end the wars in the continent and silence the guns. We must consolidate peace and security. We must invest in our children and youth who are our future. We must strengthen political and social integration. We must promote socio-economic development, and we must achieve prosperity for all. It is imperative that we take these bold actions. The Republic of South Sudan, like other countries, has witnessed too many wars and inexplicable suffering for too long. Therefore, my country recognizes the importance of silencing the guns. For these reasons, our President, His Excellency Salva Kiir Mayardit, is committed and determined to promote peace and security in the Republic of South Sudan. In September 2018, our President signed the peace agreement here in Addis Ababa and effectively committed our country to protect all children from violence and effects of war. This was a massive achievement, thanks to the IGAD leaders for their leadership and support. Since then, my ministry has implemented numerous reforms and policies to provide equitable access to quality educational opportunities for all children, including those children in opposition-controlled territories. Our children are not a party to the conflict, and their right to education cannot wait. Education cannot wait because education is a basic human right. Education cannot wait because education is an enabler. In the words of President Nelson Mandela, education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the government is using education to change the lives of the children and youth of South Sudan and to transform our country. I'm delighted to announce that we have made some significant progress thanks to the agreement and the enabling environment it created. We have increased enrollment in our schools to 3.5, almost 4 million learners in 2019. We have transferred cash to over 300,000 girls annually to attract and return girls in our schools since 2013 with the support of UK8 or DFID. We have increased the percentage of girls in our schools to 46.5% in 3,000 schools where we are taking daily attendance using school attendance monitoring system SAMS in 2019. We have launched a national action plan for ending child marriage. We have convened a conference to convince chiefs and other traditional leaders to prevent child marriage in their communities. We have established school peace and human rights clubs to promote human rights and the culture of peace. We have developed a new national curriculum which incorporates peace education. And we have developed over 120 new textbooks and teacher guides based on these new national curriculum. We have printed and distributed over 1.9 million copies of these new learning resources. We have trained over 30,000 teachers to teach to the new national curriculum. And we have started implementing the new national curriculum effective from Monday, 3rd of February 2020. In addition, the government of the Republic of South Sudan is also implementing reforms to provide access to education for over 2.2 million children out of school. I take this opportunity to thank the Global Partnership for Education, the African Development Bank, and Education Cannot Wait for funding interventions to support the educational needs of out-of-school children and to ensure no child is left behind. We will continue to work in partnership with our donors, our development partners, and local actors to include these children in our education system. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I recognize and applaud the role of the African Union in resolving conflicts in Africa. In particular, I want to thank and congratulate the African Union and IGAD for bringing peace back to my country, South Sudan. Through collaboration with the UN and AU mechanisms, South Sudan has developed clear plans on demobilization and reintegration of former child soldiers and providing educational opportunities for them. The ministry has also coordinated the rollout of the Safe Schools Declaration, to which South Sudan is a signatory. The rollout amongst law enforcement agencies, civil society and line ministries is a giant step in the right direction. It aims to galvanize support, mobilize collective action, and create awareness that schools and all learning facilities must be spared in times of conflict. These policies, initiatives, and plans demonstrate our unwavering commitment to protect children in conflict in South Sudan and to secure their right to education, protection, and development. Finally, I am delighted to announce that the Republic of South Sudan signed this action plan, which is here, and I'm very delighted to display it to you. This was signed on Friday, the 7th of February, and it was witnessed by Her Excellency Virginia Gamba, who is present here. So, this action plan demonstrates our solid commitment and iron determination to protect our children. We must double our efforts to stop the wars in Africa. because every war affects children and in essence is a war on children. We must stop the wars in Africa to enable Africa to rise. We can create the Africa we want. We can transform Africa to become a peaceful, integrated, and prosperous Africa, the continent of the future. Let us do our best and pray that God will do the rest. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Indeed, we can create the Africa we want. Thank you very much. Very good insights on the process and strides taken by South Sudan to stop the war and bring the culture of peace in South Sudan. Thank you very much, Excellency. It's always a pleasure to listen to you. I'm going to call His Excellency Honorable Abdurrahman Mohammed Abdul, State Minister for Culture and Higher Education, Federal Republic of Somalia, and he will be responding to the same questions. The Somalia example. Thank you. A round of applause, please.
Good morning, everyone. I can see that you are eating your breakfast, and my apologies that we have been late, hanging around with no apology from our leaders. On behalf of them, I would like to apologize for what happened this morning, that we have been late not to start our program on time. And I hope that will change in the future in our continent, in our countries. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to thank the government of Ethiopia for the warm welcome, the African Union, Save the Children, and everyone who participated and organized this important session. As you know that my question is very simple. Grave violations in Somalia. Somalia is a challenging place for children. According to the UN annual report on children, armed conflict of 2019, Somalia topped 3 of the 6 categories of the grave violation against children, including engaging in the recruitment and use of children, rape, and other forms of sexual violence against children. An abduction of children, according to the report, the number of children affected by grave violations in Somalia in 2018 increased by 23% compared to 2017. The report reveals that the recruitment of children by the armed groups increased compared in 2017, 2,300, in 2018 from 2,127 in 2017, including by forcing clan elders and the parents and the terrorist groups, the children for their repression. The report shows that the highest number of profiled cases of abduction in 2018 took place in Somalia, 1,609 cases, nearly 5 times more than the country with the next highest number, which is the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is 367. Somalia also represented 1/3, 331 of the over 900 cases of provided rape cases, forms of sexual violence against girls across all countries. These is the numbers that we have and provided by the research. But again, as a country, we have hope and opportunities that need to take care of. It's all about not news, good news, bad news from Somalia. The government has taken concrete steps in preventing and addressing violations against children in such a fragile context. Number 1 is a political will. The federal government of Somalia considers recruitment and use children in armed conflicts a serious human rights violation, very much committed to end all forms of violence against children. Currently, the government is working on a number of policy instruments to create conducive environment that will prevent and respond to the grave violations. These include, but not limit, comprehensive child rights field, ratification of the African Charter of the Rights and Welfare of Child, conducted a comprehensive situational analysis of children in Somalia in order to identify priorities of actions. The second, as a ministry, we took a very serious on safe school degradation and guidelines, and humbled. I was part of the delegation and the opening march of that signatory meeting. So since Somalia signed the Safe School Declaration, it has initiated a number of actions to implement the guideline, including formation of interministerial task force chaired by the Ministry of Education, which include Ministry of Women and Human Rights, Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Internal Security, and Ministry of Education. Conducted a thorough analysis of the schools, learning centers that is still occupied by military armed groups. So far, 8 schools were identified, and the government is working to ensure that the return of the communities. There are some schools and higher education institutions has been returned to the ministry. One of the biggest universities in Somalia, Somali National University, which was grounded by the AMISOM troops, has been returned to the hands of the government. Training and the capacity building of military personnel on school safety, and as a result of checkpoints have been removed or made child-friendly. In 2017, the context of implementing declaration, the African Union mission to Somalia handed several educational buildings back to the authorities, rehabilitating them first and working with the partners to ensure that grounds were clear of the explosive remittance. The other thing that we have taken was public awareness. Under the leadership of the Ministry of Defense, the federal government has to initiate a number of public mobilizations campaigns to encourage communities in strength child protection mechanism to prevent violations of children's rights. Challenge. As you might know that as a country who has been fighting for the past 10 years, I'm glad to mention that I was part of that years in the country. I grown up in that environment. I completed my secondary education in Mogadishu, where we are witness everyday violence and fighting. Challenge, limited resource. The federal government and federal member states have limited resource, both financial, technical, to prevent, respond to the 6th grade violations on children. This includes lack of institutions to provide attractive care, support communities to integrate children affected on conflict and provide the required care. Limited community participation in preventing and responding to the grave violation against these children. There is a need to mobilize and sensitize duty bearers, including camp leaders, community leadership, local authorities, and roles and responsibilities to protect and support all children to ensure safe access to the schools as per schools declaration, safe schools declaration. Third, monitoring and reporting mechanism as part of the MRM system that's managed by UN, and they are not a strong community, instructions to monitor and report grave violations against children. And fourth is climate crisis and conflicts, recording droughts, floods, and other humanitarian disasters coupled with the conflicts have pushed a huge number of children and their families out of their homes into IDP settlements. Currently, Somalia has at least 2.6 IDPs living in makeshift and also insecure environments. This continues to expose children to exploitation and violation. Although the government has plans to provide durable solutions for the chronic IDP situation, we yet to implement due to the lack of resources. Way forward. The federal government of Somalia is very committed to implement the action plans developed in 2018 in partnership with Global Coalition to protect education from attack. On implementing safe school guidelines, especially the revise policies and code conduct, including education form attack in line with the School Safe Declaration and guidelines. Revisit all checkpoints to ensure that don't prevent children from access to schools. Strengthen our public mobilization campaign to encourage protection of children from grave violations. Continue to build the capacity of our security military troops to ensure school learning centers remain safe places for children. Finally, I would like to thank the organizers, African Union, United Nations, Ethiopian government, and everyone has contributed to this important meeting. I would like to commit and pledge in front of you to talk to my leaders, President and Prime Minister, and everyone involved that to stop violations against our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Excellency, Honorable Abdurrahman Muhammad Abdul, State Minister for Culture and Higher Education. Thank you for your discourse. It's been illuminating, showing to all the best practices from Somalia. And we want to say we are also happy that you actually signed the Safe School Declaration and you have put in place measures to implement through an integrated approach by connecting different ministries in this agenda. Now, I'm going to call on donor governments to speak on their support for safe schools in Africa, particularly on children affected by armed conflicts. Norway, I will call on His Excellency Ambassador Arthur to come and speak to us on the protection of education from attack and military use. If you want to sit there, it's fine. If you want to stand here, it's fine. You prefer to sit there? Okay.
Good morning. Thank you, Commissioner Sarah, for your strong and enthusiastic leadership of these issues. Thank you to the UN envoy for her tireless efforts. We were encouraged and very happy to have the Excellency Presidents of Ethiopia and Nigeria here this morning, lending their strong support to this work going forward, and also to our friend Betty Bigombe from Uganda. Lastly, thank you to the ministers of South Sudan and Somalia for the progress they are making and the important results they are achieving in what we know is difficult contexts in their two countries. The statements that we heard this morning, and particularly perhaps by Ms. Mariam from Mali, made once again amply clear the challenges and the seriousness and the scope of the issues before us. And we've also heard a lot about the policy instruments available and what has been achieved in a matter of a few years with regard to safe schools and protecting children affected by armed conflict. I think I would like to reiterate and support what Her Excellency the President of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia said. It is now time for action more than ever. I will say briefly what Norway will do in following up, and there are 2 points, I think. Firstly, as we know, better protection of schools in armed conflict requires consistent action by all parties in the countries involved. But it also requires commitment on the part of the international community. This means, in Norway's case, that we will continue to support the work of the Safe School through Save the Children International and their collaboration with the African Union, with the AU Peace and Security Council, and the Human Resources, Science and Technology Commission. Norway will also continue to support and provide large-scale financing to global initiatives such as Education Cannot Wait and the Global Coalition to Protect Education from Attack, to UNICEF and to the Global Partnership for Education. We are a consistent and a long-term partner on these issues. Many African states benefit from these initiatives financially and strategically as they address the right to education, the agenda of protection, and the agenda of leaving no one behind. My second point, which is also important for our follow-up, relates to the International Conference on Safe Schools. Since its inception only a few years ago, this has become an arena for taking stock, exchange of lessons learned, and planning for the way forward. Norway, together with Argentina and other partners, countries, agencies, and civil society, are now planning the next international conference. The previous three conferences took place in countries in Europe and the Americas as hosts. This time, we are exploring the possibility of the fourth International Safe School Conference, if it can be hosted in Africa, with an African Union member state as host, together with the African Union. This would be an important step forward for this work on the African continent and with states on the continent. We intend to work closely together with the host country in the planning of a conference on the African continent. And I would like to, although the ambassador of Nigeria is not with us, he has left this morning to accompany his president, I would like to salute and thank him for the hard work that he has been doing together with our colleague from Uganda to move this agenda forward in Addis Ababa. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Another round of applause. So from his presentation, we have discovered that Norway plays a very important role in the promotion of the Safe Schools agenda, which protects children, teachers, and schoolrooms from attack. They are one strong partner that we've been working with, particularly in my department under the International Center for the Education of Female and Girls, that is the African Union CSA, Centre International pour l'Éducation de la Fille et de la Femme. So now, still donor governments who have been assisting us, I'm going to call on the Sweden ambassador to speak on protecting children against the 6th grade violations in Africa. Your Excellency, can you provide an overview of the support you have provided to address issues relating to children affected by armed conflicts and the way forward for the city government? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. We are very happy to be a partner government of the African Union. I would like to thank you, Commissioner, for leading this, and thank the Save the Children for organizing this, and Secretary General, the Special Representative, for your fantastic work together with us and others. But maybe now I would like especially to thank my fellow colleagues on the panel, the ministers, describing the work in northern Uganda, South Sudan and Somalia, some of the worst places to work with these issues in the world. I think there are so many things to be disappointed with when we look at the history of this, and therefore it's so extremely encouraging to hear that despite the tremendous difficulties that you're facing in this context, historically or today, you're still able to fight against. So thank you very, very much for your counsel. I really appreciate it. When it comes, as we have heard here by many speakers before, when it comes to children affected by armed conflicts, normatives frameworks are in place. So they are not the big problems. We have the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child and the groundbreaking UNSC Resolution 1612 on the 6th grade violations that I was asked to talk a bit about. These frameworks are, in my view, what we need. almost perfect. There are things you can do with everything. But the problem is the 1612 resolution last year was 14 years old, and far too little has been done. The deadline for acting on these issues was yesterday. Therefore, Sweden, during our presidency in the UN Security Council in July 2018, co-sponsored a new resolution, but a resolution to follow up and hold accountable us in the international community on what we are doing in these issues and find a way forward also to strengthen the implementation. It was adopted with a record number of 98 co-sponsors, so the support is obviously there. But of course, the question that we all must ask ourselves is, how can we be sure that this is implemented? What can we do to actually strengthen the implementation of these international commitments? We've heard encouraging examples from the ground, but how can we, as an international community, move on these issues and make sure there is more implementation, more accountability? And I would like to mention 3 things that we have worked with and continue to work with during our time in the UN Security Council and forward. Some of them have been touched upon already, but I think it's worth repeating what we see we can contribute to, with our partners today. The first point in this new implementation resolution, if I may call it so, is that the needs of children are often overlooked when peace is negotiated. Actors involved in mediation and peace processes need tools and practical guidances to integrate child protection. A process to develop this was launched by the UN Secretary-General Guterres, our Prime Minister Stefan Löfven, and Uganda. And I was so encouraged to hear that one of the first and more major steps of this will actually be announced on Wednesday in the Security Council with a protection guide for peace negotiations. But of course the process is ongoing. We need here in Addis Ababa to work to integrate it with the AU structures, to support that work and to make it real. But it's a first and very important step. Second, the resolution sets out a framework for the reintegration of children with armed forces or armed groups. And here I think, as SRS Uganda mentioned, the Global Coalition for Reintegration is quite important. If I may make a personal comment on this, during my diplomatic career I worked in Afghanistan, I worked with Somalia quite a lot, and in other places of that sort. And I think it's so obvious to me that every child soldier we recruit or who is recruited and who is not reintegrated is a seed for future conflicts. So nothing can be more important than to actually act on this, especially today with groups with violent extremism spreading all over the country. Very often the soldiers I met in the field, I'm sure you all have the same experience, are children. And as I said, they are seeds for future conflicts. There's no way there's going to be peaceful 2063 if we don't take care of those children. The third area, which we have talked about, and I will be very short, is to guarantee access for all girls and boys to education and healthcare, including mental health. This is an important part of Sweden's development program, like many others here, and I think all of us have to make sure that this becomes a reality, that the education that children get is not the education they get through war, but through schools. So I will finish there and thank again the organizers of this for giving me a chance to talk a little about the Swedish experiences. Maybe a few words on the future of our support. Of course, continued support to these important international community frameworks, resolution and others will be there, and is a key focus for us as diplomats. We are also have quite a significant development cooperation in this field, both bilaterally and I think both in Sudan and Somalia and Northern Uganda. Indeed, we have been part of the partners in those processes. We are now supporting the coalition that has organized this event, and I think there's more to do in the future. We hope that your excellent work will continue. We have recently decided to enter into new big support with 8 UN organizations in the Taku-Gunuma area in Western Africa. Let me also take this opportunity to thank the Kingdom of Belgium for your excellent work in exactly what I've been talking about, in taking this forward, and indeed for being very instrumental in delivering. I think we've had a lot in common in working with this. So there is some progress made, even though it's sometimes tiring to see this very old resolution being talked about at conference after conference. So let's together make sure that there's also some implementation. I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak a little about my country's efforts in this area.
Thank you very much, Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Mr. Sergeant Peterson, for giving to us Sweden an overview of the support you have provided to address issues relating to children affected by armed conflicts and the way forward for the Swedish government. And we also thank you for your support that you continuously give to us. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have an interaction, but it's not going to be long because the summit started at 10 o'clock. So instead of the normal time we gave to it, we're going to give 5 people. How many of us want to speak? 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Only 3 people are going to speak. So because you are just 3 of you, I will give you 2 minutes. So we are going to give you these 3 representatives opportunity for their comments, interventions, or questions. Please, I will just call you as number 1. Thank you. Somebody should help us with the mic. Number 1 is this way. Please don't abandon us. Let's live together. Together we are stronger.
Bonjour, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, je suis de la Côte d'Ivoire. C'est pour la première fois que je participe à une plateforme qui parle des enfants et je sais que vous l'avez peut-être déjà pris en compte, mais je voudrais faire une insistance. J'ai entendu parler beaucoup d'éducation et je pense bien que ces enfants que nous disons être l'avenir de notre pays, des pays africains et qui ont subi des violences, je pense qu'il y a à mettre en place un programme d'accompagnement psycho-affectif. On a parlé de santé mentale. Mais je veux dire, au-delà de ça, quand nous regardons dans nos sociétés, ils vont certes aller à l'école, ils vont gravir des échelons, ils vont occuper des postes, mais on peut constater des troubles de comportement, même de la violence à travers ces enfants qui vont devenir des adultes. Et même, on le dit souvent, évitons la guerre parce qu'une fois que la guerre a commencé, elle peut se répéter. Pourquoi nous le disons? Parce qu'une fois que vous avez été marqué, choqué, il y a un trouble de comportement qui s'installe et pour lequel nous ne devons pas ignorer et nous devons accompagner tout le long de la vie de ces enfants, les accompagner pour s'assurer qu'ils ne restent pas marginalisés. Il y a des pays où on a observé beaucoup de criminalité, de suicide, de dépression. Quand nous revenons en arrière, on se rend compte que c'est dans l'enfance que l'enfant a été marqué et violent. Merci.
And you're right. We cannot walk inside it. We have to work together. We should stop the rhetoric. We need to work. Oh, sorry. I said you're right. We should not walk in silos, but we should work together. We should go beyond rhetoric and walk the talk. And concrete man, put in the structures that we need to put in, the right policies, but the policies should leave the shelf and walk to the people, so that people can actually feel that we are actually walking peace, we are speaking peace, we are wearing peace, we are seeing peace. And all that can only be done if we go against the 6 grade violations that we mentioned and then put in the right structures. Because everybody in this room agrees with me that children are the future and they need to be given the opportunity and the right conditions environment to grow, because it is what they grow with that they will deliver back to us. It's a chain circle. Number 2.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I'm François Dumont, the ambassador of Belgium, and as it was mentioned by Mrs. Gamba, and we are working very hard in New York together because Belgium is currently the chair of the Children in Armed Conflict group, the UN Children in Armed Conflict group, and we have currently the presidency of the UN Security Council. And it was mentioned twice, but I would like just to make again this announcement of the role of my country this week. This week, the 12th of February, actually the 12th of February is the International Day against the use of child as soldiers. And we will have a very important event in New York, part of our program, in presence of King Philip, King of the Belgium, and Queen Mathilde as well. We will have the presentation, of course, by Mrs. Gamba, of very important documents, the guidance on integrating child protection into peace processes to resolve conflict and sustain peace. And it's very important for us, Belgium, to associate Africa, to associate the African Union, because after an intervention of the UN Secretary General Gutierrez, we will have also an intervention of Commissioner of Peace and Security, Shergi, on his specific experience on the Central African Republic, but also in other conflicts in Africa, because for us here in Addis, but also for us in New York, it's important to shed the light of the common cooperation between Africa, between African Union and between the UN, because we are together on this specific issue of children affected by armed conflict. So it was just my message to show that we are together, and I would like also to thank all the panelists and all the intervention coming from the field, coming from Somalia, Sudan, South Sudan, Uganda, but also from Nigeria. It's important to work with you, because with African Union we are with you to collect the information and to act, because as it was said, it's time to act. It's time also to act to protect. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, the Ambassador of Belgium, and indeed, it's time to act, and it's time to act urgently and now. So, number 3. Please, can she have the mic? This guy here, that's number 3. We have 3 people.
Your Excellencies, good morning. My name is Nancy Chapoy. I'm from Kenya, and I'm a student at the Geneva Academy. I want to congratulate Sudan for what they're doing in incorporating peace in their curriculum, because we noticed that by incorporating peace and human rights studies in the curriculum, we are able to influence the younger generation, and in impact we are going to have peace in future, because the children are our future. And secondly, we have talked about putting perpetrators to account, and as Africa we realize and we appreciate that there's a thin balance between peace and justice, and because most of the time the perpetrators are the high leaders, and I'd like us to be very cautious when we are dealing with it and come up with solutions on how we are going to hold the perpetrators to account, especially the leaders. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's good we heard from the voice of the student. You have spoken very well. Yes, there is a thin line between peace and justice. That is why they say, he who must go to equity must go with clean hands. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I know many of us still have questions. I'm going to crave your indulgence. Can you please write those suggestions and recommendations on a piece of paper and drop it at that table over there? I know my sister over there wanted to say something, but we are running out of time and we need to leave this or we'll pay another money. So with this, I would like to call on the Save the Children Director and the African Union representative, Ms. Doris Mpumu, to provide 3 to 5 recommendations of the event that we have done. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you very much, Commissioner, and thank you to everyone for being here. I'll be quite fast. As Commissioner said, we're running out of time. So the first recommendation that came clearly out of the discussion is the commitment and recommitment to international and regional standards, including the adoption, implementation, and reporting of the different instruments that we have, including the Charter, the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, the Paris and Vancouver Principle, as well as the Safe School Declaration. The second recommendation is really a call on Member States and the AU Commission Chairperson to fast-track the establishment of a comprehensive child protection architecture within the African Union Commission and the appointment of an AU Special Envoy for Children in Africa. Third, investigate and hold accountable all perpetrators of the 6 grave violations against children in armed conflict in Africa. Fourth, build on the commendable policy progress on Safe School Declaration by having more AU member states endorsing and implementing the declaration, as well as devising mechanism for reporting on implementation at national, regional, and AU levels. Fifth, the AU member states and all monitoring, all parties to conflict on the continent to urgently find consensual, meaningful, and sustainable ways of ending wars in the region, and to protect children from all forms of violence, abuse, and exploitation at times of war. Any child who has been forcibly displaced must be protected from recruitment into armed conflict, human trafficking and smuggling, violent extremism, and radicalization. 6, mainstream child protection activities into peace support operations, mandate for prevention, response, post-conflict reconstruction. And last, strengthen monitoring and reporting of attacks on education of military use and facilities and at national levels, including by disaggregating data by gender, localization, and indicating the incidence of grave violations against children. Those are the recommendations that we heard. Because I have the opportunity to be here now, I would like really to thank our moderator and actually our MC, Her Excellency Professor Anyong Abor. She's the Commissioner for Human Resources, Science and Technology. Can we please give her a round of applause for us? And also, I would like to thank our partners. I know the Nigerian delegation is no longer here, but Ambassador Rebecca and her team for helping us really organize this high-level dialogue on the children affected by armed conflict. I also want to thank our donor countries who do a lot on our continent. With the mission of Norway to the AU and the mission of Sweden to the AU. All of you are truly partners in trying to end these violations against children. I would be remiss, please, yes, a round of applause for them as well. I would be remiss if I did not thank our excellent speakers here who came all the way from South Sudan to share their experiences, but also from Somalia. Your Excellencies, we're very grateful for your presence here and for your statement. I was particularly moved by what you said, Honorable Minister from Somalia. Please be assured that Save the Children will continue to stand with you and work with you to ensure that we end the violations against children in Somalia. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doris. And since you thank everybody, let's remember that we must work against the 6 violations that inhibit the growth of the child, particularly the girl child and women. They are the most vulnerable. And the theme of this year for the African Union is silencing the guns and creating conducive environment for the African people. So together we are going to do this exercise so that you will be the one preaching and advocating against those 6 violations. And when we say it, remember you say what? War against, war against, recruitment and use by armed groups, killing and maiming, sexual exploitation. See, I'm going to say it. Attacks on schools and hospitals, war against violence. You're not saying it from your heart. Attacks on schools and hospitals, war against abduction, war against denial of humanitarian access. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this session, very important, African Union Summit, high-level dialogue on children affected by armed conflict in Africa. We want to thank all excellencies here present, all the presidents that made it to this stage, and you, our distinguished and esteemed participants, and the ambassador of Belgium. We are saying a very, very big thank you to you. Miss Miriam, we thank you for sharing your testimony, and we pray that God will continuously uplift you. Miss Virginia Gamba, the special representative of the Secretary General for Children and Armed Conflicts, your discourse was very insightful. Mr. Steve Miller of Save the Children South Africa, thank you for stopping the War on Children campaign and your 2020 report. Honorable Dan Hopian, I met you during the SCC-ESE and you have not disappointed me in the way you do your presentation. Honorable Abdurrahman Mohammed Abdul, you too, I'm happy that you are young. And because you are young, you represent the youth factor. Thank you very much. And of course, my own brother, Kwame Nkrumah said this, I am not an African because I was born in Africa. I am an African because Africa is born in me. All you, my brothers of different colors from another mother, we have the same father, and that is why Africa is born in you, and you are propagating every strategy and policy that will make us achieve the Africa we want, that transformation of an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa. And Ubuntu, I am